I'm going to cover 10 photo tips and tactics that I use every time I'm out in the field. First tip, get in front. Photos are almost always better when you get in front of your photo subject and have them coming to you versus staying behind them. When you're behind them, you're just shooting photos of their back. You can't see their face. You can't see the emotion in their face. This is kind of a tricky thing to do in hunting because when you're hunting, you're sneaking through the woods, you're trying not to spook game, and if you're trying to run ahead and get photos of your photo subject coming to you, you do run the risk of spooking game. So to get this shot, you really just have to communicate with your photo subject and ask them like, hey, do you mind if I run ahead here and get some shots of you coming to me? Good times to do this are during packouts because you've already harvested the animal. There's no risk of spooking animals at this point, or just lulls throughout the day. Or say you're just moving country and photo subject's like, yeah, no problem, run ahead, like no worries. So it's all about communication. Photo tip number 2, knock knock. Who's there? Interrupting cow. Interrupting cow, moo! My 5-year-old niece-in-law, I guess, she taught me that one. So anyway, the point of knock knock, it's really just comic relief. It's trying to make people laugh. When people laugh, you can see emotion in their face. There's nothing more genuine than a real laugh. And so often when you're hunting, or often when I'm shooting photos of people hunting, they have a really serious, stern look on their face, or they maybe are camera shy and they just have a really awkward look on their face. So if you pull out a couple of jokes or you try to make people laugh, that laugh is going to be very genuine and it's really gonna make your photo that much better. Which brings me to photo tip number 3, comic relief. Hunting is about 10% serious and 90% just having fun, goofing around. At least that's how it is for me. So definitely don't forget to document the lighter side of hunting. Photo tip number 4, add depth. The best way to add depth to an image is to make sure you always have a foreground, midground, and background. If you're shooting a low aperture and say you've got some foliage or brush kind of in front of the lens, and then halfway, say 10 yards away, you've got your photo subject, and then in the background, say you've got a cool mountain scene. Depth just makes photos more interesting, gives the viewer more to look at, and is just a great way to enhance your photos. Photo tip number 5, magnitude. Hunting takes us to some pretty amazing places with huge giant vistas and mountains as far as the eye can see. And one way I love to show this is by having my photo subject walk way out, and they'll be super tiny, usually in the bottom third, with a giant landscape behind them. So another way to think about this would be small subject, huge landscape. Photo tip number 6, suffering. Images that connect with people bleed emotion. And as a hunting photographer, emotion is most prevalent when the weather absolutely sucks. Next time a big storm rolls in, don't throw your camera back in the bag. Keep it out, throw a lens coat over it to protect it from the wind and rain and elements, and shoot. I love shooting photos in bad weather. I love it when the snow is just pelting subjects' faces. Again, it just bleeds emotion. You can really connect with the image and the situation that the person is in when the weather absolutely sucks. So shoot when the weather's bad. Photo tip number 7, don't forget the details. For this tip, I love to throw a macro lens on. I've got a Sony 90mm macro, allows me to get really, really close to my subjects. And just, I can basically photograph either a blade of grass or a tuft of hair. I love photographing animals' eyeballs, tights of an elk rub, etc. The world looks pretty wild when you throw on a macro. Photo tip number 8, wildlife. This one's pretty self-explanatory because when we're out, we're often really close to animals, really close to our quarry, and I love, love, love getting photos of a hunter interacting with an animal. And to get this, my primary lens of choice is 70-200. I'll try to stay back, 50 yards from my photo subject and just capture them in the same frame as the animal. If you want to capture really high quality footage of wildlife, I would highly recommend a spotting scope with something like a phone scope and your iPhone. This whole setup, even with like the nicest spotting scope on the market, it's going to cost you like $4,000 versus something like a Canon 600mm f4. I mean, you're looking at like a $12,000 lens, and 600mm isn't even that much of a zoom. So one great thing when you have the spotting scope, phone scope, iPhone, Setup is you can zoom in really, really far. Photo tip number 9, movement. Long exposures or a concept called dragging the shutter, those both apply here. It's basically add a little movement to your photos, whether that be star trails or whether that be, panning with your subject as they're walking by, shooting on, say, 1/10 of a second, trying to freeze that person with the background kind of blurred out or like streaked out in the back. And the 10th and final tip is to capture images of the amazing meals that we create from the wild game that we harvest. All right, that is a quick rundown of 10 different photo tips I use when I'm out photographing hunts in the backcountry. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.